In the worst of the storm, Highway Patrol Officer Ryan Hale pushed his cruiser through sheets of blinding rain, wipers struggling to keep up. Beside him, his canine partner, Blaze, a golden gray German shepherd trained to track fear itself, suddenly stood rigid, staring into the dark tree line. A distress call had just come through. A private plane had vanished from radar. Ryan turned off the road and into the forest, headlights slicing through the fog. Minutes later, a faint orange glow flickered between the trees, and the overwhelming stench of aviation fuel filled the air. Ryan's instincts screamed the same warning his years in uniform had taught him. The wreck was seconds away from exploding. He ordered Blaze to fall back, but for the first time in his life, the dog ignored him. Blaze lunged toward the burning fuselage, barking and clawing at a collapsed section of twisted metal. He wasn't searching for bodies. Ryan realized the truth too late. Blaze had scented someone alive beneath the wreckage, and they had only seconds before the entire plane went up in flames. If you believe brave officers and loyal canines still make miracles in the darkest nights, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Rain hammered the forested highway like 1,000 fists beating on steel. The storm had swallowed the world whole, leaving only streaks of headlights smeared across the wet blacktop. Officer Ryan Hale, a 34-year-old Washington State Patrol officer with a worn jawline and quiet blue eyes, gripped the steering wheel of his Ford Interceptor as it cut through sheets of rain on Highway 41. He had the look of someone who had been shaped more by silence than by words. Tall, athletic shoulders beneath a dark navy patrol jacket, short brown hair damp from the humidity, and a faint stubble that made him seem perpetually halfway between exhaustion and vigilance. His face, though calm, carried the heaviness of a man who had lost too much too young. His younger brother Evan, gone in a rollover accident 5 years earlier. Since then, Ryan had patrolled the highways as if trying to protect strangers from the fate he couldn't save his own brother from. Beside him sat Blaze, his canine partner, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a gold-gray coat, thick around the neck, muscular shoulders, and sharp amber eyes, always alert to the world. Blaze had a hybrid expression of nobility and wary intelligence, the kind of dog who carried himself like a creature aware of human sorrow, yet never shaken by it. He'd been with Ryan for 3 years, and in those years, Blaze had become the only steady presence in Ryan's life, a living anchor when memories threatened to pull him somewhere else. The storm deepened. The wipers scraped violently across the windshield, barely clearing enough space for Ryan to see more than a few yards ahead. The towering fir trees on both sides of the road bent under the pressure of wind that roared like distant jets. The smell of wet pine drifted in through the air vents, sharp, cold, and somehow ominous. Ryan let out a slow breath. "Visibility's crap tonight, buddy," he murmured, glancing at Blaze. "Stay sharp," Blaze answered with a low huff, ears perked, body steady. Even in storms like this, storms that made most animals shrink, Blaze never showed fear. He had been trained to push through gunfire, explosions, collapsing structures. Rain was nothing. But tonight, in the flicker of lightning reflected off the dog's coat, Ryan saw something else: tension. The radio crackled, cutting through the storm's roar. "Unit 214, do you copy?" Ryan pressed the button on his shoulder mic. "This is 214. Go ahead." There was background noise, voices shuffling, papers moving, someone whispering. Then a female dispatcher spoke, her tone clipped but strained. Be advised, FAA just forwarded an emergency signal. A single-engine private aircraft has lost communication over your quadrant. Last known location is roughly 3 miles west of your current position. Ryan straightened in his seat. Blaze lifted his head sharply. What's the altitude reading? Ryan asked. Unstable. Last ping was descending rapidly. Weather may have contributed. But she didn't sound convinced. Ryan could hear it. Someone in the background muttering something urgent before the dispatcher muted the mic. Ryan cleared his throat. Am I the closest unit? You're the only unit within immediate reach. Rescue teams are mobilizing, but the terrain and storm are delaying movement. Of course they were. Highway 41 ran along the edge of the Olympic National Forest, a brutal stretch of steep cliffs, gullies, dense timber, and narrow service roads that turned to mud when storms like this hit. If someone went down out there, reaching them quickly wasn't just difficult, it was nearly impossible. But Ryan didn't hesitate. Copy that. I'm diverting now. He turned the wheel, guiding the cruiser onto a narrow turnoff that cut deeper into the forest. Blaze shifted his weight, steadying himself as the vehicle lurched over potholes filled with muddy water. Ryan's heart thudded deeper, not with fear, but with the instinct that had kept him alive in a dozen chaotic situations before. He remembered his brother's voice, teasing him before the accident. You always think too much, Rye. Just do what you're good at. Run toward the trouble. So he did. Branches whipped the sides of the cruiser. Wind clawed at the windows. Lightning flashed in long, slow pulses, illuminating the soaked evergreens crowding the road. Blaze suddenly rose onto all fours, tail stiff, eyes locked forward as though he sensed something Ryan couldn't yet see. What is it, boy? Ryan muttered. Before Blaze could react further, the radio erupted again, only this time the voice was not calm. It was a man, breathless, hurried, tense in a way that made the hairs on Ryan's arms rise. Unit 214, we... Static crackled. We just detected a heat spike. The voice fractured, returned, fractured again. Possible impact signature. Ryan leaned closer. Dispatch. Repeat. What kind of signature? A pause. A terrible one. Then the man's voice returned, low and tight with dread. Looks like the aircraft may have exploded on descent. Lightning lit up the forest like a flashbang. Blaze barked once, sharp, immediate, urgent. Ryan felt something cold grip the center of his chest. He pressed the radio again. Dispatch, confirm. Are you saying the aircraft exploded? Static washed over the line, taking its time before the reply came. The voice, trembling now, whispered through the speaker. We've detected a heat bloom. It matches a mid-air or ground-level ignition. Officer Hale, it appears the plane has already gone down. Blaze whined, pacing in the back seat, restless. Lightning flashed again. Ryan swallowed hard, tasting fear, metal, and memory all at once. Send me coordinates, he said, voice low but steady. I'm heading in. As he pulled deeper into the storm-dark forest, a single thought echoed through him, sharper than the thunder splitting the sky. Whatever happened out there, someone might still be alive. But the radio crackled once more, this time with a voice so shaky it cut straight through him. Hale, another alert. We're seeing movement near the crash zone, heat signatures, but they're not from the plane. Ryan felt his grip tighten. What do you mean, not from the plane? There was a long exhale on the other end, as if the dispatcher herself couldn't believe what she saw. Because the plane's signature is cold now, Ryan's stomach dropped. Something else is moving out there. And then, we detect a flare of heat again. Officer Hale, something's igniting. Blaze stiffened, eyes narrowing toward the window, ears locked in one direction, as if he already knew what the dispatch was going to say next. The radio hissed once, then delivered the hook with a trembling finality that sliced through the storm. We've detected a new point of ignition. It looks like the plane has just exploded. Ryan parked the cruiser at the muddy edge of the forest road, the tires sinking slightly into the softened earth. The path ahead had partially collapsed from the storm, thick roots exposed like torn muscle, and soil washed down into a narrow ravine. Even rescue vehicles would be unable to push through. The storm had carved the terrain into something feral and treacherous. Ryan stepped out, the hood of his patrol jacket plastered to his face, and he lifted his radio. "Dispatch, this is 214, he said through the roar of the storm. "Roads washed out. I'm moving in on foot with Blaze. No other units will reach the crash zone in time." The confirmation came in static-laced fragments, but he caught enough to know they understood the urgency. Blaze jumped down from the rear seat, landing with the soft thud of practiced readiness. The gold-gray fur along his back stood slightly on end, each hair catching droplets of rain as he lowered his head to sniff the air. His muscles were tense, strong, balanced, built from years of hard canine training. Blaze was never one to show fear, but tonight there was something sharper in the way he moved. Purpose, instinct, and a faint unease. Ryan took a flashlight from his belt and started along the soggy path that snaked deeper into the woods. The storm made the forest feel alive. Rain smacked against the canopy in violent bursts, and wind tore through the branches, sending loose needles swirling through the air. Every few seconds, lightning split the sky, revealing fleeting shapes of trunks and rocks slick with water. The beam of Ryan's flashlight darted across the ground, catching puddles, deep, hoof-like depressions, and patches of churned mud. Blaze trotted ahead, but remained close enough that Ryan could see the wet shimmer of his coat whenever lightning flashed. Ryan's boots squelched in the mud, each step a slow struggle. His breath puffed in small clouds, the cold air spiking into his lungs. He was used to winter in Washington, but nights like this bit deeper. Something primal stirred in him. Fear, yes, but also memory. His brother Evan had always loved storms, claiming they made the world feel honest. Evan had died on a night much like this. The thought tightened Ryan's throat, but he pushed it down. Not now. Not here. Someone else needed him. A few minutes into the trek, Blaze stopped abruptly. His ears flicked forward, his tail stiffened. Ryan followed his gaze. In the distance, beyond the trees, a faint orange glow pulsed like the beating heart of some wounded giant. The crash. Ryan moved faster, climbing over fallen branches and navigating around a massive cedar tree split open by lightning. The closer they came, the thicker the scent of burning fuel became, sharp, chemical, suffocating. The glow intensified until the trees parted into a jagged clearing scarred by destruction. The plane had not crashed gently. It had carved its way through the forest floor, shearing through saplings and dragging a deep trench of torn earth. The front half rested against a cluster of boulders, the nose smashed inward, metal curled like torn foil. A fire still flickered along the edges, weak but hungry. Smoke drifted upward in heavy plumes. The back half was twisted violently to one side, a web of wires exposed, luggage strewn across the ground. A suitcase lay half open, its contents soggy with rain. A shoe rested nearby, small, women's size, not a good sign. Ryan crouched beside Blaze. "Easy," he murmured. "Listen first." The storm drowned most sound, but he picked up faint crackling from heated metal cooling too fast. Then, tick, tick, pop, the sound of thermal stress. His jaw tensed. The fuel line was unstable. They had limited time before something else ignited. He scanned the wreck. No bodies, no visible movement, no voices. But that didn't mean no survivors. People were often thrown clear from small aircraft upon impact. He aimed the flashlight inside what was left of the cabin. Torn seats, broken panels, a trail of blood on the shattered floor. But no one. Blaze sniffed the air, stepping carefully around debris. His nose lowered, then swept left to right, searching for human scent through the thick smell of fuel. Ryan placed a hand on his vest. "Find," he said softly. Blaze moved. He paced around the back of the wreck, nose nearly touching the ground, tail low but firm. Suddenly, the dog's ears shot forward. He barked sharply, once, twice, then pulled hard toward the right side of the crash site. Ryan followed, boots sliding in mud. "You got something? Show me!" Blaze accelerated, dragging Ryan toward a cluster of fallen pines partially crushed by debris. Lightning flared, illuminating something caught between two trunks. A piece of fabric, dark red, or maybe maroon. Ryan swept the flashlight forward, revealing more, the torn sleeve of a jacket. He stepped closer. A fresh drop of blood mixed with the rainwater below. Then Blaze barked again, loud, urgent, almost frantic. He lunged forward toward a narrow pocket beneath a twisted section of fuselage that had collapsed against a tree trunk. Ryan dropped to his knees and shone the flashlight beneath the metal. A face looked back at him, pale, streaked with dirt and blood, eyes half open. A woman. Alive, but barely. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, with shoulder-length black hair soaked against her cheeks. Her skin was a warm olive tone beneath the layers of grime, and even through the pain on her face, she had refined features, arch-shaped eyebrows, soft jawline, a slight cleft in her chin. She wore a professional maroon blazer, torn at the sleeves, a white blouse stained dark from rain and blood. Her lips were cracked, blue at the edges. Her breathing came shallow and slow. She blinked, trying to focus. "Help," she whispered, voice rasped raw. Ryan's pulse spiked, but his movements stayed controlled. He pushed mud aside and tried to lift the metal, but it didn't budge. He looked deeper. Her left arm was pinned beneath a collapsed frame beam. Blaze lay beside her, licking her hand gently as though urging her to stay conscious. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Ryan Hale," he said, trying to steady her. "I need your name. Can you tell me your name?" Her lips trembled. "Emily. Emily Warren." Her voice cracked. "Please, hurry." So this was Emily Warren. He recognized the name. A CEO, brilliant, driven, known for cutting-edge medical technology. A woman praised for her innovation, but criticized for her secrecy. And now she was here, half buried in mud and metal in the dark woods. "Stay awake, Emily," Ryan said. "I'll get you out." He pulled a rescue tool from his belt, a small pry bar, then wedged it under the beam. The metal groaned but didn't lift far. Blaze pressed forward, whining softly. Ryan tried again, digging his boot into the mud for leverage. With each second, the heat behind him increased. The fire was growing again, licking up the debris. And the fuel line, he didn't have to hear it to know it was worsening. Finally, with a grunt, the beam shifted enough for Ryan to slide an arm under and pull Emily toward him. She cried out in pain, clutching her side. When he managed to drag her free, her left arm hung limp, likely broken. Her breathing turned shallow again, but she was alive. He lifted her carefully into his arms. Blaze circled them, ears perked, guarding. Then, tick, pop, crack. The sound was unmistakable. Ryan's head snapped back to the wreck. The fuel line had ruptured. Flames ignited along the underbelly of the fuselage, racing toward the spilled fuel that glistened on the wet ground like silver snakes. Blaze barked a warning. Ryan turned, holding Emily tightly, and sprinted toward the tree line. Behind them, the world flashed white. A violent explosion shattered the night, sending a wave of heat across Ryan's back. He stumbled but didn't fall, protecting Emily with his body as Blaze raced beside them, dodging debris. Metal fragments hissed as they landed in the mud. Ryan collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping. Emily whimpered softly, eyes fluttering open. Blaze positioned himself in front of them, shielding both from falling embers. Rain hammered down, steam rising from the burning wreck. Ryan's ears rang, his heart pounded. But when he looked at Emily, something steadier replaced the fear. She was alive. Blaze suddenly stiffened, nose lifting, ears locked toward the darkness beyond the trees. Ryan frowned. "What is it, boy?" Blaze barked sharply, then growled, a deep, warning sound. And in that moment, Ryan understood. He and Blaze were no longer alone in the woods. Rain hammered the forest like a relentless drumbeat, turning the air heavy with mist and cold. Steam still rose from the burning wreck behind them as Ryan steadied Emily against a fallen log, keeping one arm securely behind her back so she wouldn't slump sideways. Blaze stood inches away, eyes locked on the shifting darkness, his wet coat bristling with tension. The explosion had rattled all three of them, but Blaze's instincts were already firing toward a new threat. Emily gasped sharply as Ryan pressed a folded cloth against the cut above her eyebrow. Blood smeared down the side of her face in thin, diluted streams. Up close, her injury looked deeper than he first realized. An ugly gash across smooth olive-toned skin, the edges already swelling. Her breathing was uneven, but present. She blinked twice, trying to ground herself in the moment, then looked at Ryan with a dazed focus. "Emily," Ryan said quietly, keeping his voice steady. "Stay with me. I need to check your arm." She nodded weakly. Her hair, dark, rain-soaked, tangled with pine needles, clung to her cheeks. Even in her half-conscious state, she carried an air of refinement in the delicate lines of her face and the careful shape of her eyebrows. It was the look of someone used to control, to planning, to precision, none of which existed here. Ryan examined her wrist. The angle was wrong, swollen, twisted, a clear break. He felt her flinch despite her attempt to stay silent. "It's fractured," he muttered. We'll stabilize it once we move. Emily swallowed hard, the motion visibly painful. Just get us out of here. He nodded. We will. But I need to know if there was anyone else on the plane. Her face tightened. She closed her eyes for a moment before answering. 2 pilots, both in the front. I couldn't reach them. The impact, her voice cracked, and she exhaled shakily. I think they died instantly. Ryan felt a dull tightening in his chest. Not unexpected, but still painful. The storm roared overhead, lightning carving through the sky and momentarily illuminating Emily's trembling form. She was small, maybe 5'5", with a slender, toned build, suggesting someone who worked tirelessly rather than indulged in luxury. The media had painted her as a ruthless strategist, a woman of impossible standards who demanded perfection from those around her. Yet here, she looked like anyone else fighting to stay alive. Blaze circled them once, sniffing the air, then let out a low growl. Ryan instinctively moved his hand toward his holster, but stopped when Emily tugged weakly at his sleeve. It wasn't an accident, she whispered, voice hoarse but urgent. Ryan looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Emily turned her head slightly, eyes glinting with pain and something deeper, fear or perhaps guilt. They wanted the briefcase. I heard them arguing in the cockpit before. Her breath stuttered. Before we went down, one of the pilots was saying someone tampered with the nav system. They were shouting about a transmission that wasn't supposed to be intercepted. Ryan narrowed his eyes. What was in the case? Her answer came slowly, each word dragged out like it weighed a ton. Research data, a biomedical prototype. It could change a lot of things, and people would kill to own it. The words hung there, sharp enough to cut through the rain. Ryan wasn't a stranger to greed, crime, or corruption, but hearing it connected to a downed aircraft in the middle of a storm felt too sudden, too deliberate. Where is the case now? Ryan asked. Emily closed her eyes, fighting dizziness. I strapped it under my seat before we hit the trees. If it survived, it's still near the wreck. Ryan turned toward the burning ruins. Flames licked through the metal frame, sending sparks swirling into the rain. The case was likely useless now, or worse, in someone else's hands. We'll deal with it later, he said. Right now, keeping you alive comes first. Emily looked as if she wanted to protest, but pain silenced her. Ryan adjusted her position so she could breathe easier, then tapped Blaze lightly on the shoulder. The dog responded immediately, tail straight, ears alert. Check perimeter, Ryan whispered. Blaze moved off, nose low to the ground, each paw landing silently despite the mud. He cut a wide circle around them, stopping occasionally to sniff deeper before continuing. Ryan used the moment to scan the trees himself. The storm cast shifting shadows everywhere, illusion and movement blending together. But Blaze never reacted to nothing. If he growled earlier, something had been out there. Emily's voice pulled Ryan's attention back. Officer Hale, right? Ryan's fine. Ryan, she repeated, breathing through gritted teeth. I need you to know, people will come looking for that data. If they think I survived, they won't stop. He met her gaze, shocked by the bleak certainty in her tone. Why didn't you tell authorities before boarding? Emily gave a humorless, exhausted smile. Because I didn't know who to trust. Blaze barked once sharply in the distance. Ryan grabbed his flashlight and rose quickly. Stay here, I'll be right back." He moved along the path Blaze had taken, his light cutting through the rain in narrow arcs. He found Blaze standing rigid, tail straight, staring toward a cluster of dense firs. Ryan lowered himself beside him, whispering, "What do you see?" The answer came before Blaze reacted. A faint click, metal against metal, like someone adjusting the grip of a gun. Ryan froze. He adjusted his stance, lowered his flashlight, and let the darkness cloak them. He listened, hard. At first he heard only the storm. Then slowly, beneath the rain, a second sound emerged. Footsteps. Slow, careful, deliberate. Not rescue. No rescue team moved like that. Blaze pressed closer to Ryan's leg, not out of fear, but readiness. The dog's breathing was steady, controlled, every muscle prepared to spring at a single command. Ryan leaned forward, trying to glimpse movement through the trees. Then, a flicker of white. Not lightning, artificial, a flashlight beam. Someone was moving toward the crash site. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Ryan's pulse quickened. He stepped back quietly, motioning Blaze to follow. They moved toward Emily, their pace slow but urgent. She lifted her head, eyes clouded but alert. "What is it?" Ryan knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "We're not alone." Emily's face drained of color. She tried to sit upright, wincing at the pain shooting through her arm. "You think they followed the plane?" Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Blaze suddenly whipped around, facing the tree line. His ears shot upward. His tail stiffened. His stance widened. Ryan saw it at the same time Blaze did. A beam of light cutting between the trunks, getting closer. Someone was coming straight toward them. Rain thinned into a cold mist as dawn crept into the forest, softening the edges of the burned wreckage behind them. Ryan pushed the cabin door open with his shoulder and helped Emily inside, careful not to jolt her injured wrist or the gash along her hairline. The old ranger shelter smelled of damp wood and dust, but it was the only building standing within miles, a forgotten outpost swallowed by moss and pines. Blaze entered first, circling the cramped space, nose skimming the floorboards. His fur was soaked, golden gray strands clinging to him in heavy layers, but his posture stayed rigid and alert. Only when he finished sweeping every corner did he allow Ryan and Emily to enter fully. Ryan eased Emily onto the lower bunk. Her breath was uneven, her skin pale beneath the bruises spreading across her cheek. She was trying hard not to show fear, but her trembling fingers betrayed her exhaustion. The cabin's dim interior made her look even smaller, as though the weight of everything she had survived still pressed against her chest. "You need to rest," Ryan said, kneeling to check her wrist again. The swelling had worsened, angry, red, misshapen. "It's definitely fractured." Emily winced. "I can handle it. Just don't let them find us." Ryan met her eyes, gray, sharp, intelligent, yet filled with a dread she clearly wasn't used to admitting. "I won't," he said quietly. Thunder rumbled far away, but the storm was fading. Enough calm to think, but not enough to trust. After securing the door with an old metal rod, Ryan returned to Emily. "Tell me everything, no holding back." She swallowed hard, steadying herself. The navigation system didn't fail. It was overridden, remotely. I heard the pilots arguing about a manual lockout. Then the screens went black. The last thing the captain said was, "Someone else is flying this plane." Ryan absorbed the words, jaw tightening. And all because of the Valkyrie case. Emily nodded weakly. I was taking it to federal regulators. To protect it. Someone didn't want that to happen. Ryan paced the room, hands clenched. Blaze watched him, recognizing the shift in his breathing. And now they're hunting you, Ryan said. They won't stop, she whispered. Not until they get it back. Hours dragged by. Ryan kept the stove alive with scraps of old firewood. Emily drifted in and out of sleep, murmuring through pain and cold sweats. Blaze never rested, ears twitching at every gust of wind, every shifting shadow through the fog-blurred window. By afternoon, heavy footsteps approached outside. Blaze stiffened instantly. Ryan moved toward the door but didn't open it. Instead, he spoke through the wood. Identify yourself. A voice answered, familiar, steady, and tired. Search and rescue, Thurston County. Officer Hale, is that you? Ryan unlocked the door. 2 rescuers stood in the clearing. Derek Mason, a veteran paramedic in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and deep-set lines around thoughtful eyes. And Lena Hart, a younger rescuer with blonde hair tucked under her helmet, slight build, and a nervous but determined expression. Both were drenched, boots muddy. We got the signal from your cruiser, Derek said. Weather finally let us through. Emily was lifted onto a stretcher with gentle efficiency. Blaze stayed inches from her until Ryan murmured the command to yield. Before following the team out of the clearing, Ryan radioed the secondary ground unit climbing up the ridge. Be advised, hostile suspect detained at cabin coordinates. Armed, dangerous, currently restrained. Request immediate extraction. The reply crackled through the speaker. Copy, Officer Hale. We'll secure the suspect and transfer him to state custody. ETA 20 minutes. Only then did Ryan step away from the cabin. Emily was airlifted toward Olympia General Hospital. As the helicopter lifted, her eyes found Ryan's, filled with complicated gratitude and something like fear for him, not herself. Then she disappeared into the clouds. When the forest grew quiet again, Ryan stood beside Blaze, staring at the empty clearing. He felt the shift, the moment hope left the woods, replaced again by waiting danger. He and Blaze began the long descent through mud and debris back to Highway 41. The storm returned in waves, occasionally breaking to reveal patches of cold sunlight. Every hour felt heavier than the last. By the time they reached the road, rescue vehicles lined the shoulder and officers took reports. Ryan gave a detailed account, omitting only the parts he didn't trust federal ears with yet. But something inside him had changed. The forest, the wreck, Cole's revelation. None of this was over. Night fell. Back in civilization, Ryan sat alone in the quiet of his apartment living room. Blaze lay at the balcony door, eyes alert even after the long day. Ryan tried to shake the feeling pressing against him. That calm had come too early. He had seen enough in his years on the force to know when a story wasn't ending. He could feel the tension, like a held breath waiting to break. Then his phone vibrated. Emily. He answered quickly. Emily, are you stable? What room are you? Her voice came weak, trembling. Ryan, someone was in my room. Ryan shot to his feet. Blaze lifted his head, muscles tensing. What do you mean someone was in your room? I woke up and there was a man by the monitors. I didn't see his face. He unplugged something and when I shouted, he ran. I told the nurse, but she didn't believe me. Ryan grabbed his jacket. Stay where you are. I'm coming right now. Ryan, don't! Static exploded across the line. Then silence. Blaze rose fully, ears high, sensing what Ryan felt in his bones. A creak outside the apartment. Soft, slow, not the wind. Blaze growled from deep in his chest. Danger had found them again. Rain had returned to the forest like a slow-moving curtain, thin but relentless, whispering against the cabin roof. Ryan stood in the dim interior, studying the heavy wooden door he had reinforced earlier. The cabin felt colder without the presence of Emily's fragile breath or the rescuer's brief chatter. Only Blaze remained as a steady presence, pacing near the windows, his dense golden-gray coat bristling with tension. Hours had passed since Emily was taken to the hospital. The forest should have been silent now, cleared, secured, and wiped clean by the rescue teams. But the unease in Blaze's movements said otherwise. His instincts rarely failed him. A sudden metallic click echoed outside. Not loud, but sharp enough for Blaze to stiffen. Ryan moved to the window. Through the thin veil of rain, a silhouette was approaching. A lone man, tall, shoulders hunched slightly, as though he had lived his life leaning into storms. His jacket was dark, waterproof, military cut, not the standard gear of the rescue crew. Mud spattered his boots. He held something in his hand, half covered by a black tarp. Ryan drew his weapon slowly. "Easy, Blaze," he murmured. The man stepped onto the wooden porch and tried the doorknob without hesitation. It rattled firmly. Blaze's snarl filled the cabin, low and controlled. Ryan called through the door, "Identify yourself." The man froze. Then, in a steady voice, "I'm with the recovery team, searching for the aircraft's emergency beacon. We tracked it to this quadrant." Ryan didn't open the door. "State your name." A long pause. Then, "Cole Harmon." Ryan's pulse tightened. Cole, the scavenger they had detained earlier, was already in state custody. The real Cole was currently being processed miles away. Whoever stood outside was lying. Before Ryan could speak, the man began fumbling with a device. Small, black, blinking red. A signal scanner, not standard issue. Blaze barked sharply. Ryan kicked the door open in a sudden burst of force. The man stumbled backward, caught off guard. His hood fell, revealing a gaunt face in his late 30s, pale skin drawn tight across prominent cheekbones, and dark stubble surrounding a sharp jawline. His eyes were a cold, unreadable gray, the kind that had learned to hide intent rather than emotions. He carried rain like a second skin, as if he'd lived too long in the shadows of missions no one spoke about. Ryan stepped forward. "Drop the device, now." The man didn't obey. His gaze flicked briefly to Blaze, a calculating, predatory assessment. Then he smiled faintly, a thin stretch devoid of warmth. "You shouldn't be here alone, Officer Hale." Ryan tightened his grip on the gun. "You know my name." "I know more than that," the man said. "I know your dog's call sign. K9 1117, Blaze, trained for search and apprehension, loyal to a fault." Blaze growled deeply. The man tilted his head. "Your rescue team was delayed 6 hours. The storm helped us more than it helped you. And now you've made things inconvenient by surviving." He reached into his jacket, not for a gun, but for a folded sheet of plastic. The sound of it unfurling echoed in the forest. It was a map. Highlighted coordinates, flight path markings, crash site diagrams, and underneath, a single photo. Emily Warren. "You're after the Valkyrie case," Ryan said coldly. The man didn't deny it. She told someone. She wasn't supposed to. The rain grew louder. Blaze stepped forward, muscles coiled. Ryan lowered his voice. "Tell me who sent you." The man smirked. "People who don't like your report." He suddenly moved, fast, trained, but Blaze was faster. The dog lunged, jaws locking around the man's forearm with controlled precision, forcing him to drop the device. He screamed, stumbling as Blaze dragged him down. Ryan moved swiftly, pinning the man with practiced technique and snapping handcuffs around his wrists. The man lay on the wet porch, chest heaving, eyes burning with hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. Ryan ignored him and searched his pockets. He found an encrypted earpiece, a folded list of frequency codes, and a second photo, Emily again, taken before boarding the plane. Ryan felt the dread settle again, heavier this time. This wasn't a freelance scavenger. This was a hunter. And Emily had been his target long before the plane ever took off. Before Ryan could question him further, the man began laughing, a hoarse, broken sound. "They're coming," he whispered. "You think I'm the only one?" The radio on his belt crackled. A distorted voice muttered, "Beacon located, moving into perimeter. Secure the asset." Asset. Not person, not witness. Asset. Ryan's stomach tightened. Emily was alone in a hospital room with only one fractured wrist, a concussion, and the fading strength of a survivor who trusted him to return. He needed to go. Now. He hauled the man to his feet, secured him to the porch column, and called dispatch. "This is Officer Ryan Hale. Suspect in attempted recovery of restricted technology detained at Ranger Cabin North Quadrant. Send state troopers immediately." The dispatcher hesitated. "North Quadrant? Officer, that area's been cleared. There shouldn't be anyone." "That's the problem," Ryan cut in. "Send backup now." He didn't wait for the reply. Blaze was already at the truck, tail stiff, body shaking. Not from fear, but from urgency. As Ryan climbed into the driver's seat, thunder rolled across the valley. The rain intensified, beating against the windshield like warning drumbeats. He floored the engine. The tires spat mud behind them as the cruiser tore down the forest road, weaving through fallen branches and slick turns. Blaze pressed against the passenger door, eyes locked on the blurry, rain-soaked world ahead. Halfway down the road, Ryan heard motion in the trees. Alongside them, running figures, shadowed, parallel to the cruiser. More than one. He accelerated. The hospital lights appeared on the horizon like a trembling promise. He was almost there. Almost. Then his radio crackled again, this time with Emily's voice, weak, barely audible through static. "Ryan, someone's in my room." Then, a strangled gasp, a crash, dead silence. Ryan's grip tightened on the wheel until his knuckles whitened. "Hold on, Emily," he whispered. Blaze let out a fierce bark as if answering the promise. They drove into the storm, straight toward the danger waiting on the other side. Morning arrived without sunlight, only a pale sheet of gray pressing low over Washington's Olympic foothills. Ryan parked his cruiser behind the station, Blaze leaping out first, shaking the moisture from his golden-gray coat. The dog kept glancing toward the road as if expecting danger to materialize from the mist. Ryan understood the feeling. Inside the station, fluorescent lights hummed with an uneasy stillness. Officers moved with the sluggish rhythm that followed storm emergencies. Ryan felt the weight of the night still clinging to him. Emily's broken voice, the forest shadows, the man in the rain, and his cold, lifeless smirk. Captain Morris waited in his office. A heavy-built man nearing 50 with sandy gray hair, spectacled eyes, and hands that always carried a faint tremor, a remnant of an old spinal injury from a traffic collision rescue 10 years earlier. His demeanor was usually calm, fatherly even, but this morning a tightness drew his brow inward. "Sit," Morris said without greeting. Ryan did. "What you brought in from the cabin?" Morris slid a sealed evidence bag across the table. Inside was the encrypted earpiece and the folded map. "This complicates things." "It proves Emily was targeted," Ryan said. "It proves the crash wasn't an accident." Morris removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Ryan, federal agents were here before dawn. DHS, supposedly. They confiscated your evidence, including Harmon, the man you detained." Ryan's eyes hardened. "They took him without paperwork?" Morris gave a small, frustrated nod. "They said it was interagency priority. They outrank us." "That man tried to abduct a crash survivor," Ryan said, "and he claimed his team was coming for Emily." "Which is exactly why," Morris whispered, "they didn't want us holding him." Blaze growled softly, pacing the room. Ryan leaned forward. "Captain, you don't believe the storm caused that crash." Morris's jaw flexed. "I believe what the report tells me to believe." "And what do you believe off the record?" A long silence. Then, "I believe someone wants this buried, and they have the power to do it." Ryan felt a chill deeper than the morning cold. Morris gestured to the screen on his desk. The official FAA investigation report flickered. Loss of avionics, weather interference, no foul play suspected. Everything he'd witnessed was gone, scrubbed clean. "Rewrite your field report," Morris said. His voice was low, regretful. "Remove all mention of external devices, third-party interference, or pursuit by unknown actors." "That's lying." "That's surviving." Ryan stood abruptly. Blaze rose with him, alert. Morris eyed him with something between warning and sympathy. "Hale, you push any harder, they'll come after you too." Ryan left the office without another word. He walked past the dispatch room, past the evidence lockers that now held nothing of what mattered, and stepped outside to breathe. Rain-damp wind brushed across his face. Blaze pressed his head against Ryan's hip, grounding him. They were still standing there when Ryan's phone vibrated. Emily Warren. Her name lit the screen like a fragile lifeline. He answered instantly. "Emily, are you safe?" Her voice trembled, weak and frayed. "I don't know. Something's wrong here, Ryan. A man came in earlier, said he was with DHS. He asked about Valkyrie case. About you." Ryan's heart kicked against his ribs. "Emily, listen, stay where you are. I'm coming to—" Static sliced the line. Then a thud, a sharp cry, a stranger's muffled voice. Then nothing. The call cut. Ryan froze, phone still pressed to his ear, breath tight in his chest. Blaze lifted his head, ears pricked, sensing the shift in Ryan's heartbeat. Just then, Officer Jenna Ruiz stepped out of the station, a young Latina in her late 20s, sharp-eyed and quick-thinking, her black hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore her uniform with a precision that mirrored her personality, organized, methodical, and always 2 steps ahead during chaotic calls. "Ryan?" she asked, catching the tension in his posture. "Emily's in danger," he said. "Someone's at the hospital." Jenna frowned. "You need backup." "I don't have time." She stepped closer. "Hale, I know what the captain told you, but if the feds are involved, we're no match alone." "This isn't federal," Ryan said. "This is cleanup, silencing. Whoever they are, they already erased the cabin incident." Jenna's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Blaze barked, short and sharp, as if echoing the urgency. Jenna hesitated for only a second, then nodded. "I'll keep chatter off the radios. Go." Ryan didn't waste another second. He sprinted to the cruiser with Blaze right behind him. The drive to Olympia General was a blur. The closer he got, the heavier the dread settled. His thoughts raced, not just about Emily, but the strange intelligence behind Valkyrie case. A device meant to help the disabled, speech, movement, communication, yet valuable enough to hunt, sabotage, and kill for. Whoever wanted it wasn't stealing technology. They were silencing a future. Blaze whined softly, sensing his turmoil. At the hospital parking lot, emergency lights reflected off wet pavement. Too quiet for a weekday. Too still. Ryan slammed his door open, Blaze jumping out instantly. They crossed the lot with purpose, their shadows long under the overhead lamps. Inside, the lobby was lit but eerily empty. A single nurse sat behind the counter, a man in his 50s, thin, pale, with tired blue eyes and a clipped, professional smile. His badge read, "Logan Price, RN." "Officer Hale," Logan said calmly. "You're here for the crash survivor, correct?" Ryan froze. He hadn't given his name. He hadn't shown his badge. "How do you know who I am?" Ryan asked quietly. Logan's smile didn't falter. "We were informed you might come." A flicker of recognition crossed his features. Cold, deliberate. Blaze stepped in front of Ryan, every muscle rigid. Ryan placed a hand near his holster. "Where is Emily Warren?" Logan tilted his head. "Being transferred." "By who?" "Federal agents." Ryan kept his voice even. "Let me see the transfer papers." Logan blinked, too slowly. "There's no need." Blaze let out a low, threatening growl that rumbled through the lobby. Ryan leaned closer, voice tightening. "Where is she?" Logan finally cracked, just slightly. "Basement level, but you're too late." Ryan didn't wait. He ran. Blaze shot ahead, paws skidding across the polished floor as they reached the elevator. It was descending. Someone had taken it down moments ago. Ryan didn't wait. He found the stairwell, threw the door open, and sprinted down the steps 2 at a time. On the last flight, Blaze stopped suddenly. He stared downward, listening. Then, a scream. "Emily!" Ryan charged. He burst through the basement door, and the world narrowed into a nightmare corridor. Dim lights, flickering bulbs, the smell of disinfectant and damp concrete. At the far end, just beyond the ambulance bay doors, Emily was being forced toward a white SUV by a man in a black windbreaker. Tall, muscular, carrying the confident steps of someone trained in extraction. Another man hovered nearby. A guard. Ryan didn't hesitate. "Emily!" She turned, eyes wide, terrified, her broken wrist wrapped in a temporary brace, her head bandaged. The kidnapper jerked her toward the SUV. Ryan reached for his weapon. Blaze launched forward with a roar, and as the lights flickered violently overhead, the entire basement erupted into chaos, setting the stage for the final confrontation. The basement corridor seemed to stretch forever, its overhead lights flickering in a sickly rhythm like a heartbeat on the verge of collapse. Ryan burst through the stairwell door with Blaze at his heels, his boots slamming against the slick concrete. The air was heavy with the hum of ventilation, metallic and cold. The kind of air used in places meant for storage, not safety. At the far end, the white SUV sat with its rear doors open. Emily Warren, pale and unsteady, was half dragged by a man in a black windbreaker. He was tall, mid-40s, thick shoulders pressing against the seams of his jacket, hair cut close to the scalp, jaw square and dusted with gray stubble. His movements were sharp, mechanical, too precise to be anything but trained. His eyes, dark and flat, were the eyes of a man who believed emotions were liabilities. Beside him stood another figure, slightly shorter, leaner, his expression blank, body positioned like a guard waiting for a command. He had sandy hair, freckles across his nose, and the detached posture of someone accustomed to ignoring pain, his or others. Emily struggled weakly, her bandaged wrist hanging limp, lips trembling from shock and fear. When Ryan shouted her name, her head jerked up. "Ryan!" she cried, voice cracking. The taller man reacted instantly, pulling her closer, pressing her against the SUV. "Stay back, officer," he barked. His voice was low, authoritative, as if he were used to being obeyed. "This doesn't concern you." Ryan leveled his weapon. "She's a civilian survivor, a witness under police protection. That concerns me." "You don't understand what you're interfering with," the man said. "This is containment, national security protocol." "Funny," Ryan replied sharply. "Protocol usually comes with badges, papers, and actual paramedics, not kidnappers hiding in basements." Blaze let out a deep growl, the kind that vibrated through the concrete. The tall man narrowed his eyes. "You have no idea who you're protecting." "I know enough," Ryan said. "Let her go." Emily tried to pull away, but the man's grip tightened around her upper arm, her face contorted with pain. That was all Blaze needed. The K9 launched like a bolt of gold and gray lightning. The guard stepped forward to intercept, but Blaze hit him full force, teeth locking around the man's forearm as they crashed to the floor. The guard screamed, fighting, but Blaze held with perfect K9 control, firm, disabling, non-lethal. The tall man shoved Emily toward the SUV and reached under his jacket. Ryan saw the motion and fired. The bullet struck the concrete inches from the man's foot as he dodged behind the van door. "I said let her go," Ryan shouted. "You're making a mistake," the man snapped back. "You think this is about harming her? We're trying to protect everything she's endangering." Emily collapsed against the SUV bumper, sliding toward the floor. Panic twisted through her voice. "Ryan, don't let them take the case. They'll weaponize it." Ryan's pulse spiked. "They already have plans for Valkyrie, don't they?" The tall man didn't answer. His silence was an answer by itself. He lunged around the SUV door, gun drawn. Ryan fired again, grazing his shoulder. The man stumbled back, but he didn't fall. He moved like someone trained to push through pain, gritting his teeth, blood staining his jacket. Ryan advanced, keeping low, weapon steady. Blaze still wrestled the guard on the ground, but Ryan trusted his partner to handle it. "Stand down," Ryan shouted. "Officer Hale," the man said, panting. "You've already lost. The network is bigger than you can imagine. Bigger than your captain. Bigger than federal oversight. You can shoot me, but someone else will take her." Ryan's grip tightened. "Maybe, but not today." Suddenly the man lunged for Emily again, trying to pull her into the SUV. Ryan fired a third shot, hitting the SUV frame with a metallic shriek. Blaze reacted instantly, abandoning the guard and spinning toward the tall man with explosive speed. The man swung his weapon toward Blaze. Ryan didn't think. He fired. The gunman collapsed, weapon clattering across the concrete, his breath ragged but alive, wounded and unable to continue. Emily let out a trembling sob, sliding fully to the floor, clutching her wrist to her chest. Is it over?" "Almost," Ryan said, rushing to her side. Blaze stood over the fallen gunman, chest heaving, ready to strike again if necessary. The guard lay groaning near the wall, immobilized by the bite. Ryan holstered his weapon and checked Emily for injuries. Her pulse trembled under his fingertips, but she was conscious, aware. "Ryan," Emily whispered, "I didn't want any of this. Valkyrie was meant to help amputees speak again. People with spinal injuries walk. Even stroke survivors regain control, and they want to turn it into a surveillance weapon. With you out of the picture," Ryan said, "they'd own it." Her eyes filled with tears. "I trusted the wrong people until the plane went down." "You trusted the right person now," Ryan said softly. The basement suddenly erupted with noise, boots pounding, voices echoing. State troopers rushed down the stairwell, led by Officer Jenna Ruiz, her expression fierce and focused. "Ryan," she called, "we traced a burner signal from the station. We knew something was wrong." Troopers swarmed the area, securing weapons, cuffing the two attackers, and calling medical teams for Emily's transfer. Captain Morris arrived moments later, rain-soaked, his usual calm replaced by something heavier, guilt or maybe vindication. He looked at the fallen men, then at Emily, then back at Ryan. "You were right," he said quietly. "This wasn't federal. This was something else entirely." "Something with reach," Ryan said. Morris nodded. "Whatever it is, it's done here." Emily was placed carefully on a stretcher. She reached out, gripping Ryan's sleeve with her uninjured hand. "Thank you for coming for me." "Always," Ryan said. Blaze pressed his head gently against her arm, earning a faint smile. Hours later, after statements were taken, after the attackers were transferred to state custody under heavy guard, after Valkyrie case was recovered intact from a hidden compartment in the SUV, dawn finally broke. Emily stood outside the hospital, wrapped in a blanket, still pale but steady. Ryan and Blaze stood beside her, both bruised and exhausted, but unbroken. Beyond them, the first rays of golden morning light filtered through the thinning clouds. "I've been offered a chance to rebuild Valkyrie," Emily said softly. "Properly, as a non-profit initiative to help officers, canine handlers, veterans, anyone who needs it." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like something the world could use." She smiled gently. "Only if the right people work with me." Her eyes flicked to Blaze first, then to Ryan. I want you two to be my first guardians." Ryan exhaled a quiet breath. "We'd be honored." Blaze barked once, sharp, joyful, certain. And as the sun rose over the Olympic forest, three silhouettes stood together: a cop, a survivor, and a loyal K9, no longer linked by danger, but by something stronger. A chosen family, forged in storm, fire, and unwavering courage. Sometimes God doesn't send a miracle in the way we expect. He sends it as a storm, a stranger, a warning, or even as a loyal dog who refuses to leave our side. For Officer Ryan, Emily, and Blaze, the night the sky broke open was supposed to be the end. But in that darkness, something greater was moving. A protection that no badge, no weapon, no technology could offer. Only grace. Maybe that's how God works in our lives too, not always with thunder or shining light, but through the people He places on our path, the courage He whispers into our hearts, and the strength He gives us to stand up when the world bends under us. And if you're watching this right now, perhaps this story is your reminder. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And storms, no matter how loud, eventually pass. If this story touched you, I invite you to share it with someone who may need a little hope tonight. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and let us pray for one another. And if you believe God still works miracles, through officers, through survivors, and through faithful animals like Blaze, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our family here on the channel. May God bless you, protect your home, and watch over every faithful heart, human or animal, who stands in the storm and refuses to give up. Amen.